Alright guys, so this is our third video now. We've done content, we've done macromolecules. If you haven't watched those, that's okay. You can pick up here. This will probably be the most watched video just because it has lots of confusing parts and names. I will do my best to be as clear and concise as possible, and we'll get started. With cellular respiration, there are three distinct cycles within it. So there's glycolysis, there's the citric acid cycle, and then there's the ETC, or the electron transport chain. Now, our products of cellular respiration is creating energy for our bodies and our cells to use. We know this energy comes in the form of ATP, or adenosine triphosphate. We also, because we're inefficient, lose a lot of our energy as heat. And then some of the byproducts we create are water, carbon dioxide, and energy, I guess, but not really a byproduct. That's more of the product we want out of this. So we're looking to get energy for our body. Now, talking about adenosine triphosphate, remember tri means three, like a tricycle. We have three phosphate groups and an adenosine group. There's a chain of three phosphates. In the very last part of the chain, the terminal bond, remember terminal like going into an airport or being terminally ill means the last stage. So in our terminal bond, this is where we store energy. Think about it as potential energy. When it breaks the bond, that's when our body can actually use it. That's when the cell uses it. But that stored energy is in the terminal bond of our phosphate chain. And this is talking about with ATP. When it breaks, it releases energy that can be usable by the cells. Now, why we use it are things like active transport of other molecules, things that actually require work for our cells, and synthesizing other compounds, things like that. But really, just in general, you need it for energy for your body to carry out reactions. Now, when that terminal bond breaks on ATP, or adenosine triphosphate, it's now going to switch to ADP, diphosphate, meaning two. So with adenosine diphosphate, basically you can go back and forth. So the idea in this slide, I guess, now reading it again, probably wasn't as clear as I could have made it. All I wanted you to understand is that you don't just get this accumulation of ADP because the ATP breaks off the bond and then it's not usable anymore. Basically, you can go back and forth between the two. So you start with ATP. If it breaks and it goes to ADP, you can add a phosphate and some energy back. It goes back to ATP and so on, and your body can use it like that. So the analogy it uses on this picture is a partially charged battery for ADP, and then ATP is a fully charged battery. That terminal bond is holding all the energy ready to break so that it can be released and used. So now that we've covered what is created by cellular respiration, let's break down cellular respiration. Going into that very first step, glycolysis. So for glycolysis, you start off with glucose. A little bit easier to remember because glucose, glycolysis, makes a little bit of sense. So as you think about like a conveyor belt, so you start glucose up at the top. I also had you draw it in your interactive notebook. So if you're lost on this, take out your interactive notebook and look at it. Okay, when you watch this video, look at it and follow me step by step. So you start off with glucose. It goes through glycolysis, and you don't have to know what happens there. You just need to know it starts with glucose, which is a 6-carbon sugar. That's also our monosaccharide. It goes through glycolysis and it breaks into 2 pyruvic acids, so 3 and 3 carbons on each. Byproducts of this reaction are your gain of 2 ATP, and you also let off some of these high energy electrons that we're going to talk about throughout the entire process. Outside of this, the only other thing you need to know is this is anaerobic. This is the only part of cellular respiration that it's anaerobic. Anaerobic means that it doesn't require oxygen, not energy, oxygen. So anaerobic means doesn't require oxygen. The reason why this is the only one is this is the one that doesn't happen in the mitochondria. The other two do, so they do require oxygen. So for glycolysis, starts with glucose, ends up with 2 pyruvic acids, creates 2 ATP, lets off some electrons, and it's anaerobic. Moving forward, we know we have this like part 1 of our cell cycle. My other computer said something crazy. Let me go back for you. So for our citric acid cycle, we have this priming step. Basically, we aren't in the mitochondria. We're just within, and remember, this is happening inside every teeny tiny itsy bitsy microscopic cell. So within our cell, there's different places you can be, but it'll move to the mitochondria. When it sends these pyruvic acids, so remember we did glucose, went through glycolysis, and now we're at 2 pyruvic acids. these are going to get past the mitochondria in kind of like a priming step. Now, when this happens, you actually lose some carbon. Because it's in the mitochondria, there's also oxygen present. So when it loses the carbon, it bonds with oxygen, and we release it as a byproduct of CO2, or carbon dioxide, which you can breathe out of your body. You also lose electrons at this point, and the product of this is acetyl-CoA. So now that you know about enzymes, acetyl-CoA is short for acetyl coenzyme A, which is the very last part of enzymes that we talked about. So once we've gotten to here, we still don't have citric acid. So this is where our weird part comes in, and we start using the kind of strange words for it. So we have oxoacid. It comes in and makes a baby with acetyl-CoA, and that baby is citric acid. So again, that means that it's gone from pyruvic acid, it's gone to the mitochondria, it pops out acetyl-CoA. At that point, you let off some carbon dioxide, you let off some free electrons, some high energy free electrons. Now you have acetyl-CoA. Oxoacid in your cell comes in, meets up with your acetyl coenzyme A, or acetyl-CoA, and it creates citric acid. Again, at this point, you have that release of CO2 and some high energy electrons. Now that you have the citric acid, it can go through the citric acid cycle. Remember, we talked about this as turns. I said think about like a merry-go-round. The first turn of the citric acid cycle produces 1 ATP. The second turn of the citric acid cycle creates another ATP for 2 ATP total. Okay, so 2 times through the citric acid cycle, 2 ATP total, 1 from each turn of the citric acid cycle. This is also occurring in the mitochondria. So we went to the mitochondria, we had this priming step that created acetyl-CoA. Oxoacid comes in, makes its baby, which is called citric acid. It goes through the citric acid cycle. All of this is aerobic, meaning you do require oxygen. And we're in the mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell, which is your favorite thing for you guys to say. And oxygen's present, so it's able to happen. Now, our final step of cellular respiration is the electron transport chain. Remember, we've been kind of tossing these electrons off to the side the entire way down our process. Now, all of these get picked up and brought to another part of the mitochondria. So you have to think about it as these are being tossed off throughout the cell. All of these get lumped together and go through the electron transport chain. At this point, they're brought to a series of enzymes that convert them into ATP. And remember, this is the one that we get our most bang for our buck. So for the first 2, we only got 2 ATP out of it for 4 total. With this one, it goes through this series of enzymes, and now we get 34 ATP total, giving us the most out of any of the steps so far. So our byproducts from this are heat, water, H2O, and then our high energy electrons are used, and they pop out 34 ATP because of those enzymes. And this is also an aerobic process, meaning it requires oxygen. It also occurs in the mitochondria. It's the only one that doesn't occur in the mitochondria, is glycolysis now. Now, overall, we've created 34 ATP molecules. Now, I'll tell you that the body isn't super efficient. Everyone's not the exact same, and we're not going to have perfect cellular respiration cycles every single time. It's around 38 ATP total, 2 from glycolysis, 2 from the citric acid cycle for each turn, and then 34 total. And you need to know that water and heat are also byproducts of the ETC, or electron transport chain. Other than that, that's it. Now, I know that that's a lot of information thrown at you. Again, take out your interactive notebook, look at that flow chart I had you make, go through and make sure you understand what's coming in and out of each step and what the byproducts are. I won't go really in depth on the test, but you do need to know what's going on at each step. Happy studying, guys.